I'm Pastor Theron. Welcome to Church Where You Are and Story Sermons, relating life's experiences to the Bible. I'd like to tell you a story. But first, I'd like to say a special word of welcome and thanks to some new friends here in Tennessee. My neighbor John, who's quirky and weird, but a good dude. Some of the people that I work with at the VA and people that I see every day. The ladies who run the valet station, and Robert down in the domiciliary. Appreciate you guys and thank you for your support. I'd also like to say that I'm starting to put these videos on YouTube. The channel is called Church Where You Are. I hope that you will take time to find them. They're not only these story sermons, but there are Wednesday Bible studies and some Sunday sermons as well. Check those out. Don't forget to subscribe and give me a comment and a thumbs up and like the video and like what I'm doing here. I hope that you will continue to support it and watch and offer your comments and share it with other people. I really appreciate it. One of my very favorite pictures is to me is a perfect description of ministry, and I don't think there's any caption on it. It's a picture of a man giving a pair of sandals to a woman on just some dusty path in the middle of nowhere. It looks like a desert scene, or I think maybe it was in Haiti. I don't know, but it's one of my most favorite pictures, and I think it describes the point of ministry. Ministry is expensive, it's messy, and it's humbling. You will never know what true generosity looks like. You will never experience this level of humility until you give something to someone that can never pay you back. And to me, that is the definition of ministry. Churches across the country are starting to reopen. I think the whole state of Texas is open right now. The state of Louisiana has gone to phase 3. I think there are a number of other states around the country that are beginning to reopen in full. Restaurants and stores and places of gathering are starting to open for full capacity, or whatever their limits they have set are. And I would like to speak to that in terms of our churches. I have a story to tell you about myself and an interaction I had with a pastor of a church, and I think that there is a message in that, and I'd like to share that with you today. In 2003, I graduated from seminary with my preaching degree, if you will, and we lived in an apartment. We lived in a quadplex on the seminary campus in New Orleans, and we couldn't get an extension to stay even because they were tearing our building down. And for remodeling, that's a whole nother story for another day. But as I graduated in December of 03, I was talking to a couple of churches. Nothing really worked out. Nothing seemed to be working out. I mean, we didn't know where to go. We didn't know what to do next. And so we packaged up all of our belongings in our little apartment, and we put them in storage, and we got in the car with a couple of duffel bags each, and we drove to Idaho and spent the first 4 months of 2004 staying with my mother in my hometown of Lewiston, Idaho. As things began to unravel in Louisiana, we had to return. And when we got to Louisiana, didn't have any extra money, didn't have any extra anything. It was tight. It was a tough time. Some friends of ours from church, we had started attending church again, and some friends of ours from church invited us to live at their house. I will forever be appreciative to David and Teresa and their kids, and they took us in, the two of them and their 4 kids, in a 3-bedroom house, and we had a bedroom to ourselves, and they did. Their kids all slept in one room, and William slept on the couch. It was only supposed to be for a couple of weeks, but I had a hard time finding a job. Everywhere I went told me I was overqualified. They couldn't pay me what I was worth. They were unwilling to hire me For whatever reason, my National Guard unit was deployed to Iraq. It was a very desperate time. We wound up staying there for about 6 months. In that 6 months, every possible thing you can imagine happened. There were times when we were glad to be there, and they were glad to have us, and there were times where it was kind of strained and tight and difficult, but there wasn't enough money in the account to go get our own place, and as hard as I tried to get a job, it just wasn't happening. So I went to the church looking for help. I approached the pastor as a pastor, or a person intending to be a pastor, and I had this idea of networking. I had this idea that people in those church settings and in various settings would come to the pastor and they would say, "I need you to pray for me. You know, money is tight, times are difficult. If you could just be on the lookout for somebody who needs to buy my car, or if you could be on the lookout for, do you know of anybody who might need to rent my back building," or something like that. And I was hoping that this pastor had done some networking. Some people had opened up to him and said, "You know, we have this little house in the back, or we have a rental property. We're having some difficulty renting it, and we would love to have a young couple or responsible people to rent it and pay their rent regularly." And so I went to the church and I talked to the pastor, hoping that that would be the case. I had done everything I knew to do. I had talked to realtor companies. I had talked to friends. This is in the days before Facebook, when I could have sent out just a message. This is in the days before social networking really took over. And so my networking was a whole lot of phone calls and every kind of advertisement paper I could look in. I was looking in the classifieds. I was looking in house sales papers. I was calling real estate companies that manage rental properties. I did everything I knew to do. This was a last-ditch effort, hoping and praying that somehow other church members or friends went to this pastor and said, "We just need some help," and somehow he could connect the two of us. So I went to the pastor and I said, "Things are difficult, things are tight. I'm just looking for a place to rent. I was hoping maybe you knew of somebody who had a place to rent." And no kidding, he looked me square in the eye and said, "Have you considered the classifieds?" I was insulted, to say the least. How is it possible that someone like myself didn't consider looking in the newspaper? I had looked in the newspaper for weeks at a time, didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say. I was just absolutely beside myself, and thanked him for his time, and I left. As the story unfolds, and as it comes to a conclusion in this portion of my very odd and long story, we did find a place to live. I wound up going to my second half of chaplain school with the military, and made enough money in that 6 weeks to come back, and we rented a small mobile home. We didn't live in it very long, and then Hurricane Katrina happened, and then I went on to my first church. I took that lesson with me, and took it to my first church, and it was so great because that first church in Port Barre was a hub of distribution for Second Harvest and Catholic Charities, and we gave out food. In fact, following Hurricane Katrina and Rita, we had a storeroom full of food, and people would come to the church asking for it, and I would put together a weekly box of food for people from town that just needed it. Another story for another day. Years later, to tell you the rest of this story, years later, I bumped into that same pastor in a grocery store, and he said, "Well, how you doing, man? How's things going?" And I said, "Great." And I didn't have a whole lot to say to him. And as the short conversation came to an end, he said, "Well, if you ever need anything, let me know." I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He said, "Well, if you just ever need anything." And I said, "Well, like what?" What I didn't say was, "Because you didn't help me a whole lot the first time." But I guess I didn't need to say that. I didn't need to hold that over him. I didn't need to hold that against him. But I did need to learn from it. And I think we can all take a lesson from it. Because it says in James chapter 2, beginning in verse 14, "What good is it, my brothers, if a man claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save him? Suppose a brother or a sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to him, 'Go, I wish you well, keep warm and well fed,' but does nothing about his physical needs, what good is it?" In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by actions, is dead. It's dead. It has no life in it. It has no meaning to it. It has no purpose to it. It's dead. You have to put hands and feet to your faith. You have to put hands and feet to your action. You have to put action to your ministry. You have to be intentional about it. There has to be a purpose to it. There has to be a point to it. I believe that as churches around the country begin reopening, people are going to begin searching out truth. They're going to begin searching out hope. They're going to be looking for ministry, whether they know to ask the right questions or not. We as Christians and churches in general need to have something to give to people, if only a box of food or some clothes or some offering of hope. Something has to be given, more than just a warm well wish and some well-intended words of comfort to say, well, whatever you need. They may not know what they need. I didn't know what I needed at that point in time. I just needed a place to live. I needed a place to rent. I needed to be able to support my family. It wasn't happening. It was devastating to me as a husband, as a father, to have that desperate of a need. People may not even know what they're looking for, but I hope that we as believers and churches in general will have an answer when that question is presented to us. We need to be able to put something in people's hands when they reach for help. It doesn't have to be a hand out, but how about a hand up? How about a firm place to stand? How about a soft place to land? How about words of comfort? How about words of ministry, more than just be warm and well fed? How about we put real hands and feet to it? Let's be intentional about our ministry and not just spoken words. Thanks for watching.